Right. So, good afternoon, everyone. So, in the age before it became all digital, every retailer actually, you always used to go and shop next to your, kirana store next to your home, right? So, generally, that person would know everything about you. He would also know the household you came from. So, probably he would even know what you needed in your household because they're used to serving you over the years, right? Then the digital age came in, and you started seeing personalization happening. It started with segments getting created. People started getting, targeted through segments which observe their behaviors. And then it went into micro segmentation. Then retailers or, the industry adapted to techniques like recommendation engine, predictive analysis, and all of that, right? But today we are now seeing a new trend that is coming in, or emerging trend with all of the technologies that are enabling it, which is hyper personalization. So beyond, for example, looking at the clicks that you do on a site, they've started observing things like your intent signals when you go into a website or maybe even just on ChatGPT and type that you're looking for financial planning for a new baby. It is actually understanding that your life events, right? That probably you have a new baby and you're starting to plan a savings for that new baby. So it's taking all of those signals. It's gone beyond just looking at your clicks, the click streams, and all of the other behavioral symptoms that you used to exhibit on the internet as such, right? So with that and with the technologies that have grown to actually enable that, like with cloud being able to process a lot of data, with new technologies like generative AI coming in, which can actually understand your context, understand, it has natural language understanding and things like that, right? So all of that is enabling a different kind of intelligence. And most of it is becoming more sort of ambient intelligence. For example, if you're traveling, you put in, your destination that you're going to, Kochi or Kottayam or maybe your home destination. But what happens if there's an accident on the way? The map actually automatically understands that there is a time that you need to reach within, and so it finds a new route for you. So without you knowing it itself, personalization is happening on behalf of you across all of the spaces that you're actually interacting with. This is actually happening. So that's what we're here to discuss today: personalization or hyper personalization, right? So probably I'd start with Radha. And for Radha, I would probably ask you, from your experience, what does it actually mean to, have an AI-driven system to remember you as a user and continuously adapts its understanding to offer hyper-personalized experiences to you?
One of the things that we need to understand is like, is it that, AI which created this trend of hyper personalization? I would argue that it is no, right? Hyper personalization was more of like a, goal that every B2C organization which was there, irrespective of it's a shopping or because for me the best B2C one which I compare is the social media networks, right? Like Facebooks and Instagrams and WhatsApps and all, right? And whole personalization was being attempted, long time back, even before AI was there. But now when AI is coming into the picture, it has become more of like a, kind of an amplifying factor to reach what you call it as the hyper personalization. And traditionally, if you have been, following up the space, what you would have seen is that always personalization was based on creating personas, right? Personas can be based on various different criterias. It can be more about, like, for example, things like bucketing a set of folks into a certain persona. Maybe let's say, for a simplistic example, let's say Gen Z, or millennials or something like that, right? Or people who stay within Cochin, right? So that is how it used to be, but it was not like a one-to-one or a more of like a unique personalization that it was being done for every individual. So it was more about like finding cohorts and then targeting stuff around that. But that entire trend that you used to see there has completely changed, with especially technologies like AI being there. AI, and it's not only just AI. There are many what you call technology advancements which has really come in, which made that thing possible, right? So for me, the real sense of hyper personalization means when you are moving away from this segment based or persona based personalization into more of what we call it as like a one-to-one personalization, right? Now how do you achieve that, right? So to achieve that whole thing, that's a whole different issue which I'm sure we will cover in these discussions, but I think there are some fundamental principles that we all need to understand. So when I say fundamental principles, it is something like we call it as the first principles. The first principles of hyper personalization. What is that first principles? First principles of hyper personalization is moving away from your persona based approaches and rebuilding that into more of what we call it a segment for one, right? Because typically when you talk about segment also, it's for a group, but here we are talking about segment for one, right? So that is what is really for me hyper personalization is going to be all about, right? Now how do we achieve it, what the challenges are, what technologies will enable it, we will definitely discuss more about that.
Yeah, thank you, Radha. And I would also I'll take the liberty of calling you KK. Okay, so if when we are talking about hyper personalization, right, it's not only about achieving hyper personalization, it also means how can you achieve it at scale, right? So for you, do you think that is something possible with the enablement of technology today? And probably we can or if you can give an example of how that happens in the industry.
Right. So let me start with a story. Like in 2019, there's a movie called Spider-Man: Far From Home happened. Right. So this is the first film where I kind of understood what hyper personalization really means in the pop culture memes bit. Like where the character called Quentin Beck is asking Spider-Man that you belong to Earth 616, right? And the Spider-Man said, am I? Right? Yes, of course, you have a personal universe within yourself and you are a global story. Everybody knows about you, but you have a personal universe wherein thousands of data variables are there, right? So Kindenberg doesn't kind of share this kind of explanation to what personal universe is all about, but what it really meant is, so far, like Radha was mentioning about, marketers were focused on segmenting, categorizing, right, demographically, like looking at the whole market, right? And then we moved to like, you cannot consider everyone, one size doesn't fit everyone, right? You have to treat every individual as a universe and then try to explore the possibilities there, right? For example, if someone tells you, okay, you are young, okay, you are Gen Z, right? Doesn't mean anything about it, right? So you cannot, probably broadly categorize any individual just based on a demographic or income or anything, because we've become more than that, right? I think that's where the whole conversation. So if somebody is trying to categorize us, probably we don't like it, right? So we had a conversation with Radha, right? And Radha doesn't write reviews, and probably if Amazon is empathize with Radha and say, don't send him emails on reviews. He doesn't like it. He treats us as an annoyance, even if the product is something which he likes buying from, right? But I think that's the level of empathy we would require to have to answer a question on scale, right? Imagine now you can teach 1 million people AI in India right now. You just have to like do 4-hour course, like upload it in Microsoft and give it free. 1 million people will learn this. But how many of them really are going to kind of imbibe it in the way they want? And that's where hyper personalization goes in, right? I want to learn something. So today I want to learn calculus. Okay, it's a very difficult subject. So if you missed to learn that earlier, because it was given on a standard template to everyone, right? Expecting that everyone is going to pick up calculus just like like IQ 130 people will pick up, right? But a lot of people are below that, and how do you treat them as like inclusive? So hyper personalization is also inclusive game, right? We are including more and more people in the game in the process, right? So we were discussing an example on travel. Like, so now people don't want to just travel to say Kolkata, right? People want to travel, say, don't give me a standard travel package. Give me a package it is truly Instagrammable, right? Which makes you feel truly different from the rest of the travelers who go to the same city, right? I want to have unique experiences which are different, right? The same reason why Airbnb launched something called discovering experiences, because people don't want standard template-based experiences. So we are moving from categories, segments, broad demographic to personal narratives, and we're creating more of such personal narratives. And with AI, it's actually this first time probably AI is actually helping you to contextualize that with cloud, with Gen AI, with with lesser and lesser latency. It's all this combination of factors now making it possible, right? So when I say making it possible, of course, we may have to discuss on the architecture, we may have to discuss on the rest of things, but it's a strong possibility now. We can think of getting services in travel, insurance, financial services. Think of the last time when you went to, when you really wanted to know how to probably invest, right? It's so difficult to get the unique advice you want, to invest, because everything is very broad, right? You invest in mutual funds, right? There's very broad advice someone gives you, right? Imagine, hey, this is the money, this is the way you spend money. This is the way you have to kind of have the goal for probably buying something you want in next 2 years. This is the kind of salary you're getting. So there are probably 25 variables which will determine the fact that how you should be getting the investment advice. Rather, we are getting a very plain, templated, standardized advice to millions of people. This is where hyper-personalization can really change the way as a user. So we may have to take a perspective of user, builder, and as a B2B solutions provider. Obviously, our clients also will be happy if the customers are getting interesting conversions based on this. For example, tomorrow someone tells you, based on instead of saying that you should go to gym, okay, it's a very plain advice a lot of people give you should go to gym, right? Instead to say if you work out in the morning, the effectiveness is much 30% more than the evening because your metabolism works like this. Then you listen to them, right? Why? Because it's not plain advice, right? It's because 20 health variables have been taken into consideration to share that, right? You should avoid probably a dessert after dinner. You can probably have it in lunch, because after dinner is going to give you a 40% spike on sugar, which is hyper-personalized, right? People love that kind of feedback than giving them standard advice. I think that's where we are moving to. So as a consumers, we are going to be super excited, by the way. I mean, if I can get that kind of feedback for me, and everybody likes relatable for me advice, not general advice, right? I mean, that's something which I thought to have to start the conversation with.
And also to add a couple of points to what KK just mentioned. Some of the instances that I have seen for hyper-personalization, one I experienced, okay? So other one I have not experienced, but I heard about it. There was a advertisement from, I think it was from Hilton Hotels, and they were advertising for vacations. And in Switzerland, it seems like they have one of the hotels they have. It's not only just about booking the hotel for how many number of nights you want to stay. The entire room will be personalized for you, right? So it's as part of your booking process. It will ask for some additional questions, like your tastes, your colors, everything, right? So the moment you reach there, it's like tuned to your consciousness, right? And it's not only that. It will even the walls, right? The sceneries that is being displayed on the walls, right? It will also, Hilton will do that for you based on your initial inputs, but it will even allow you to actually change those things once you occupy the room.
Yeah.
Right. So look at the level of personalization where it is going on, right? So that is how things are moving. Now, as you see, there are factors which are going to influence more of this, and systems trying to make and understand it better, and these things will automatically come to you, right? So that is one experience which I have not experienced, but I read about it. The second one is this whole thing about healthcare, right? One of the instances he was talking about the medications and all those things, right? Like the moment you eat, because I am a diabetic, so I understand. So whenever you go to the doctor, he typically, will say, okay, morning you take 10 units of insulin, even you take 20 units. So we'll fall. But then the next time, 3 months after that, I go back again. Oh, my HbA1c levels are remaining the same. He will say, okay, increase this by another 5 units, other bit. But then it's like, keeping on increasing the, insulin doses, right? But then I talked to somebody, whom I trust, then he told, okay, there's something called machine called CGM. It's called continuous glucose monitor. You put that patch, then, you will see how your body is actually reacting to, what you eat and what the medications you take. And that is when, I could really, with 15 days, I could understand how my body behaves. Like, what is a time when, my sugar level spikes, right? So that is where the true personalization came in. Then I took this history to my friend of my doctor and told, oh, so it looks like your sugar is increasing during the lunch time. So then you have to adjust your medicines for the lunch, right? So think about this. If I were to go with that standard template of a diabetic patient, I will never correct my problem, right? But when it became personalized and very specific to me, I started seeing the results. So personalization is going to be a key factor in everything, right? It's not only just one of these things, even what you learn, what you eat, what you do, what you think. Things are all going to be more and more, very personalized for the individual, and you are going to see that. Right, so we are going to talk about some of the ways in which that will allow businesses and various entities to adapt to this as well. Okay.
Yeah, thank you, Radha and KK. So I see a lot of students here. So I think one other area where personalization is going to scale is probably in education, right? So having instead of having a teacher for 60 students, probably you'll start seeing you have your own AI tutor who understands what is your competency level, where you are at a subject, and so sort of curates the learning to you individually. So, that is a scale of personalization that we'll be seeing going forward. I think that will become, we're starting to see that, and probably mainstream quickly, things that will be changing. So to Radha, we were talking about hyper-personalization, right? So what would be the technical enablers that would actually enable this journey, right? What are the things that we would, or an enterprise needs to have or needs to build to actually, get to a point where they can actually do true hyper-personalization?
Correct. So this is a very, interesting topic, especially people within the technology space, right? This will be very interesting for you to understand. Okay, we talk about all these great things, making it one-to-one and all, right? But what goes underneath? A simple example, right? For example, you go to, for me, the biggest, or the most interesting example that I have seen for hyper-personalization is the Facebook and Instagrams, right? Because you can see the moment you go and see a certain post or a feed, everything that you start seeing following that has some relation to what you saw. Over a period of time, it will understand what is the type of content you like, and then it keeps, feeding you more and more that kind of content, right? So that is the best example of hyper-personalization that I have seen, right? Now, so as you experience, you might feel, yeah, everything what I, want to see is coming, but underneath, do we know what are the under the hoods, what is happening? That is the most complex part, right? So that is why people talk about all this, high engineering, work that happens in all this, Mac 5 companies, Mac 7 companies, and things like that, right? So if we were to even do, let's say, 1/10 of that, right? That should be good enough for a typical, retailer or a brand, right? So we can learn a lot of lessons from them. So there are a couple of, I would call it as, key critical, tenets that need to be in place if you want to achieve that level of hyper-personalization. The number one is what we call it as identity resolution. Why identity resolution? Is because I might go to, let's say, Facebook on my mobile. Maybe when I go home, I will go to my laptop and then I will go to my same Facebook page, right? Now, if I look at it, it's two different devices that I am using, correct? And similarly, there can be multiple channels also I will use. I might go to my mobile app on my mobile, but on the desktop, when I go, I will probably go and look at my browser. So there is a different channel, there is a different device. So now I am the same person, but I am interacting with a brand or a retailer through multiple devices, multiple channels. So now the system needs to somehow tie together all these things and say, hey, this is Radha, same Radha coming through multiple doors, right? So that is the most, so it's called like, identity resolution. How you do that? Yes, technically there are a lot of strategies for that, like recognizing that this is Radha, right? So how do I do all those places, right? So that is, I would call it as the number one factor that needs to be in place. Number two is for the system to capture everything that I do. See, traditionally, if you look at it, what used to be captured, especially from an analytics perspective, was and olden times, what used to get captured is just to make sure you understand, okay, how many pages is getting visited, right? Or how many orders are getting placed, or what time. So those are the kind of broad level metrics that used to be captured. But if you want to do hyper personalization, now you need to capture what we call it as lot of micro moments a customer spends with you on your channel or through whatever surfaces you have exposed. Correct? So in that micro moments, it's not just about only visiting a page. In a page, where am I visiting? Am I spending my time above the fold where I look at the images, or am I spending time below reading the reviews? Right? Because if I am spending more time reading the reviews, okay, the platform will understand, hey, this guy cares more about reviews, right? So better let me show him things which can convince him better, because he looks like he's a guy who spends more time on reviews, tries to understand rather than looking at the beautiful picture there. Correct? So capturing those micro moments is something, and with that, capturing these micro moments is not just about only where I'm looking at, right? Maybe I come to the site more often during the night, because that's the time when I might find the time, right? Or well, probably when I travel, when my driver takes me, that is the time when I'm looking at it. Or when I'm sitting somewhere else. So it is capturing all my micro moments, right? So when I do this, what happens is the amount of data that is getting generated. So now you need to capture all this data. So that means when you capture all this data, one is the velocity in which you get this data. The other one is the veracity, basically, in the terms of the volume, not the volume, the different types of data. And the other one is basically the volume of data, the 3 V's of data, right? So how do you take and, you process this data and you store that data, right? It's huge. For example, to give you some statistics, Facebook today has close to around 2.5 billion customer visits per day. 2.5 billion. That is means what? Twice the population of India. And on a monthly active users, if you look at it, it is around 3.5 to 4 billion. So if these many people are coming into that platform and it is hyper personalizing things for every individual who visits, think of what is the engine that is sitting below to make this, hyper personalization happen for you, right? So getting to having the technology in place to capture this data, process the data, and store the data, right? This is another big technology innovation that has come, which is enabling hyper personalization. And the third important factor is, if I look at it, is all about, it's not just about showing all these things to the customer. It may be so that you capture all my data, but I as a individual should be given the liberty to say that don't use this data for something, right? Because unless that privacy and confidentiality is taken into consideration, people will start feeling uncomfortable. Because today, I'm sure many of you might be knowing, in Facebook, you can go and turn off your search history, right? So that it will not capture everything that you're searching for. Similarly, there are a lot of these kind of, guardrails that are there. Like you can ask Facebook to, let's say, forget you, so that everything that you did for the last, whatever period of time, it will forget, right? Because, see, it gives the flexibility to the end user to say that how do I respect your privacy. So privacy management, consent management, these are all things which are inbuilt, which actually will make and amplify the whole thing of personalization. And the fourth important thing, this is not a technology yet there, but as you guys might all be like today wondering about AI and trying to learn AI, the next biggest amplification for hyper personalization is happening, going to be through a technology called quantum computing. quantum computing is going to be the ultimate technology which is going to make this thing realize, right? Why? You might ask, why quantum computing? Because look at the volume of data, the combination of, the permutation combination of things that needs to be analyzed. The classical computing that is available today cannot deal with the mathematical algorithms that, that needed to be done to give you the true hyper personalization. It's not about, it can do, but it might give you the results after 10 minutes, right? You don't want that, right? You want instantaneous results. So the speed at which, you can do this computation, optimization, and all those things, right? Yeah, this is good. So, maybe who is controlling it, we don't know. Okay, anyway, I'm talking, so I'll keep talking, right? So what is going to happen is, like, the speed at which this computing is going to happen is going to be having a profound impact on how hyper personalization gets done. So I would strongly recommend, like, as you guys are all what you call grappling with AI, Gen AI, and all these technologies, start looking at the possibility of getting to know what sort of, how is this this quantum computing as a technology is going to evolve. Try to see if you can get hold of some quantum computing services, and try to even do simple things like you can try. I have tried few things with some stuff, and then I can experience saying that understand the kind of what you call optimization, the speed at which these results are going to come. So these are some of the technologies, Manju, I wanted to really tell that are going to really make a huge impact in achieving this hyper personalization.
Yes, thank you, Radha. And I think another important thing, Radha, while we wait for quantum computing to come in, I think right now with the technologies available, computing all of this on the edge is probably something that needs to happen so that we are able to deliver the hyper personalization, at least for today, right? So that you respond with speed to the customers, right? And to you, KK. So we discussed about privacy. Radha just spoke about it. So do you think that what is a customer mindset? Are customers actually willing to share their data so that we can actually achieve, or the brands can achieve hyper personalization or provide hyper personalization to their customers, or are they still people who are very fidgety about sharing their data? And I just wanted to understand what their mindsets are, if you have a view.
So essentially, customers don't have a clear stand on this. Like, it depends on each of the customers. But once they start getting the benefit of, like, personal data graph, for example, if I'm willing to share my personal data graph, what's in return for me, right? I'll ask this question, like, I'm sharing all the variables to you, but give me some super value out of this, right? I think that's the deal with the customers are looking at, right? If I can give Amazon all the data, right, of all my purchases and everything, but give me super optimized purchase decisions, which will improve my ability to, because if I'm a bad shopper, I would essentially want to become a better shopper in the process, right? So if I leave this data to you, will you be helping me or will you be manipulating me, right? So there are different ways in which the platforms can work on you. Like, they take the personal data graph and they say, no, I'm going to help you, give you super value, make you a great customer, and then in exchange they get the benefits, right? But there are other players who are like a bit pushy. They would like try to manipulate, persuade. Like, I think that's what social media has seen right now, where each of our feeds are different, by the way. There is no single same feed you and I get, right? So every feed is so unique universe, and it's based on how you think, how you respond, how you act, how do you kind of do the conversations. And they clearly know that what's the kind of news which will work here, what are they watching, right? So sometimes it could be persuasive, sometimes it could be useful for me, right? So when I started kind of exploring more of AI, like, I went to X platform, Twitter, right? And then I unfollowed all the political pages, which I have been kind of, because everyone has a geopolitical stand, right? But what I did first was to unfollow that, and then started following all the generative AI experts, analysts, and researchers and all that. That significantly improved my feed, right? And thereafter, I didn't have to see all the other things, which helped me to kind of improve my attention on what I am watching. So there are two things. One is you as a customer can take a deliberate stand, like probably 5-10% of the people who take that deliberate stand. Second is that there is no deliberate stand at all. You are just leaving it randomly, and you are allowing other people to influence you. So I think people are becoming more conscious and aware in terms of sharing their personal graph, right? So there is a concept called context graph in AI. So imagine you're using ChatGPT 25 times a day, and I'm sure how many of you use ChatGPT 25 times a day? Raise your hands. I'm sure, right? So what happens is when you go to like your user account, go to settings, right, and you go to personalization there, you'll see something called manage memories. Right? Have you seen that? Right. So when you go to manage memories, you'll interestingly see that there are almost 60 memory snippets about you, right? I mean, and these are memory snippets which have kind of been collected based on whatever you have been talking to. So what I do is after every project, because when I do project to project, right, a lot of memory would still be there. So I would say forget everything about this memory or delete one by one, or even sometimes start as a new individual, right, by forgetting all the memories, right? This is a process like even an AI tool can probably do for you, right? And now what's happened is the second step, as like, for example, as a user in ChatGPT, you can connect it to say apps, right? I'm sure some of you have tried this, connecting it to Google Drive, MS Teams, Gmail, and all of that. What you're doing is you're not just uploading or putting conversations, you are opening the access of all your, data room primarily to AI and say, take it, right? And then help me, right? This is the blatant ask, right? Like, I am giving all the access to you. I trust you, OpenAI, Claude, and all that. But help me with something which I can use now. So I think people have become two things. One is that they don't want to take a lot of cognitive effort to do shopping, to do learning, to do insight generation. As much less effort as possible, the more convenience plus relevance. I got two things. One is show me more relevant stuff, right? Show me content, show me insights which is relevant and in a very convenient way, which means I don't have to even take effort to understand or differentiate between what is good, bad, or ugly, right? So hyper-personalization has become a responsibility of big platforms now. If they are responsible, then the end users are going to be finding use. Otherwise, there is no real effort from end users except probably 5-10% of people who are conscious users of all these tools. I think that's the way I find users who are less than 10% people who are conscious users. And I think the responsibility more lies with probably developers like you, builders like you, and the platforms you're working with. Right? And to answer a question on this, how willing people are trying to kind of do this, I think there are people who are default willing. So two kinds of willing, right? One is default willingness, right? When you sign up for a product, you are actually giving a lot of willingness unknowingly, take it, right, and help me, right? Second is a bit of cautious, right, approach to how you take it.
Thank you, KK. So I think we've covered stuff from probably a consumer angle, right? So if I were to ask you, Radha, so when brands decide to do hyper-personalization, how do they design these experiences? Do they actually consciously have to design experiences to the end consumers because they are doing hyper-personalization? What is your take on that?
Okay, so there is a short-term view, a medium-term view, and a long-term view on this, whatever question that Manju just asked, right? So from a short-term view, when you look at it, if I forget about, I'm providing everything, but what does, as a business, what am I looking forward in return, right? In the short term, I have typical KPIs which I want to show to my organization, right? Basically, it might be in terms of the average order value that gets generated out of, transactions that happen, the click-through rates, which is the typical, marketing, metrics that you all might be, what you call familiar with, right? So that is what, they are being asked to optimize. And for them, probably hyper-personalization is one of the ways in which they can increase those, KPIs, right? So that is a short-term view of it. In a medium term view, when you look at it, what are those KPIs? Maybe in a medium term, let's say you have customers registered on the site. You want them to frequently come back, right? So you want to reduce the churn. So that might be, one of the key KPIs. You want to reduce the returns, right? So these are all, so every perspective, when you look at it, there are various kinds of KPIs, and businesses are being mandated to do that. And especially when you look at it from a long-term perspective, it will be like, the lifetime value of the customer, right? Or the brand, loyalty, right? Or, the trustworthiness of the brand that is providing to the customer. So these are all those kind of KPIs. So all these businesses are being tuned or set to, meet these kind of KPIs. Now, how do they meet those KPIs, right? So this is also an organizational change that is happening. How, do you keep all these metrics in place? Traditionally, if you look at it, all these being probably would have been handled by the marketing team of the the organization. They will design the campaigns, they will send it across, they will look for these metrics and things like that. But when you come into the hyper-personalization age, it is not just the campaign manager alone who will make these decisions. That instead of calling it a campaign management, this entire department itself will be going to be called as something like personalized experience department, right? So it's, rather than looking at it from a transactional perspective, now we are looking at it from a more strategic perspective, saying that how do we provide that experiences so that it becomes more intimate and all those kind of stuff, right? And how do you do that? That is being not done by a set of individuals like the campaign or the marketing team. It will be a what you call a kind of a group of people spanning across multiple departments. Especially people, campaign marketing team will be there. There will be team from the data, because they are going to be the people who are going to analyze the data and provide the detailed insights. The detailed insights has to come, right? So that needs a good data team available with them. There will need to be a good engineering team, right? Engineering team who is going to finally get all of these things stitched together and deliver that experience, right? So engineering team is there. And the most important thing is the safety team, which includes the risk and compliance team, right? So all these people have to work together if you want to deliver this end-to-end hyper-personalized experience. You might ask why you need the risk and compliance, right? So risk and compliance is needed because you need to make sure that tomorrow you are not getting landed into or getting sued into some legal problem, because probably you might have used the personal data in a inappropriate way, or you didn't have all the necessary disclaimers being displayed and saying that because today that's another big thing, right? In AI also, one of the biggest challenges that you see in AI is what? The deterministic nature, or the non-deterministic nature of the output that it gets provided. But then when it provides the data or the output, it also needs to explain how did this guy recommend this data, right? Because most of the time when you talk to things in AI, everybody, you ask, AI is a black box, nobody knows. You give the prompt, it gets the output. But that is not good for when you run enterprise businesses, right? Because you will need to clearly be articulative, or backing up every single recommendation or action which you are going to do for on behalf of the customer. So that's why this risk and compliance team becomes very important in delivering these kind of personalized experiences. So that is how the organizations are also moving up. So if you go and search LinkedIn, you can see some of those job profiles also getting changed. Experience manager, earlier they used to call campaign manager. Okay, so you will see that sort of changes happening within the the workforce also. That's going to see as you move forward.
Thank you, Radha. So, like Radha sort of indicated, right, we are moving away from personalizations that happen through campaigns to personalizations that happen understanding what the customer needs actually right now, right? Not just what the customer needs, but what he needs right now. And so that's what hyper-personalization is all about. So we are running out of time, so I probably will probably come to the last question and get a view from you on how do you see the future of hyper-personalization, right? How do you see this going from here? So today we are talking about hyper-personalization that works for me based on signals that are captured, micro moments that are captured, conversations, intent, and all of that are captured, right? Going forward, would that change with all of these AI agents and a lot of things that is coming in, right? How do you see that? How is the future going to be?
So in AI, we call it context window, right? It's the working memory of the AI tool to understand and kind of capture the information about you. I think the ability of AI's thing to kind of work on larger working memory is improving. Like, I think it's not improving; it's non-linearly changing, and that's a huge thing. So imagine, just to give an example, a year ago, you could only like probably upload a 100-page document to ChatGPT and ask it to kind of work on it. Do you know what's the number of pages you can actually make a normal ChatGPT to work on? Any guess? 800 pages, right? And do you know how many pages Meta can work on? It's 15,000 pages. Google Gemini can work on 3,000 pages, right? Which means 3,000 pages of textual data is its working memory for one user, right? Like to do 1:1 thing. So the context window has a way, it's rapidly improving, and say like in next 1 year you can imagine the kind of data it can work on. So that's a huge possibility for hyper-personalizing initiatives, right? One. Two is, of course, the cloud is already like scalable, it's huge. Three is that the personal graph builders, like how do you build the personal graph and arrive at the logics, right? But the biggest problem here is that if you have 25 variables, like for example health variables, right, you should be knowing the relationship between all these variables and should be able to sensibly understand and arrive at a decision logic which could be useful for the user, right? I think that's where people are going to work on that decision logic than on rest of the technology, because the rest of the technology is there already. Now we might need people with 3 doctors coming and say what is the relationship between this factor to this factor in this person, right? So it will go deeper into a level where it's not just hyper personalization, it's about building personal graph of people working to know about the relationship between the variables and then giving a decision logic which probably these people will be accountable for. Now I'll tell you one, right? So earlier when we consulted someone, like they gave you a prescription, they are not accountable for our thing. Now platforms will have to be, so I'm going to take up the advice of a financial advisor, an AI financial app, and if I lose money, the platform will have to be accountable. And that level of accountability will come in, and probably platforms will become more confident to give their accountability, but because they have the decision logic with them, right? I think that's fairly like what we see right now. I think it's going to go anyway crazy with all this. Each of these variables, for example, latency, context window, all of that what we see here is improving.
Thank you, KK.
Yeah, and also to add to this, right? So this is where, Manju asked this question, but this is where one area where Manju's team is also, doing a lot of work, right? In terms of, building that, whatever, that intelligence layer. Because as we said today, all organizations have a lot of transactional systems, analytical systems and everything, right? But Manju's team is building that entire so-called decision engine, right? In terms of which actually identifies what can actually be, targeted, or what should be the next best action or the next best content that needs to be shown to a customer. And again, it underlying, I'm saying it's in a very simplistic manner, but if you go and look, below the hoods, you will see the complexity of involved, the various technology layers that are involved. The graph databases, the event streamings, the processing logic, the underlying models. So it's a huge, set of stack which is sitting in, below that, right? So just wanted to see, as we progress, all these technologies will be, further maturing. With every, new stuff that is coming in, we will see more maturing happening. But what I believe is that sometimes, people miss out on the evolution, and they just see only, what is correct, right? Because that is where, sometimes I always believe what people should do is that they should look a little behind and see that, how this evolution look like, right? Then you will understand, because that is where I actually tell, all of my team members also, I'm not worried about, whether this tool or not. I want to understand whether you understand the ground, like, the fundamentals. If you understand the fundamentals, how you can, make things work, how you can scale up things, how you can meet these kind of, volumes, that you're good. It doesn't matter, which tool, really helps, or what is the tool of, trend of the tool at that moment in time, right? So that is where, we as an organization are also not focused in terms of, how we bring up our workforce so that they're fundamentally strong. You're grounded, right? I don't care whether you know X tool or Y tool. That's immaterial, because 6 months down the line, that tool may not even exist, right?
Thank you, Radha. And so, in conclusion, I'd say that with the way that intelligence is growing, probably personalization zone or hyper-personalization zone will become ambient. We'll not even notice it, right? It'll just happen in the background, and you will see, recommendations coming to you, and you're also acting on it unconsciously because it's just working in the background because it understands you. We're going into a world where probably I will have a digital twin which understands me very well, my preferences, what I need. And so it will probably just know that I have an event tomorrow and go and purchase a dress for me for that event, and I'll just have it delivered at home. The technology is moving in that space, right? So, that's where we see things going. And with that, we would conclude, and I'd probably open it up for questions from the audience if you have any.
Right.
So, a couple of questions. We spoke about hyper-personalization. Now, when we talk about hyper-personalization, where do we draw the line with privacy infringement, and how are we going to control? I know that you spoke about all the teams that will be there trying to restrict or ensuring that we don't violate GDPRs and all those laws. And also, I think, sir, you mentioned about just less than 10% having the actually going in and modifying their preferences in a way that they will get that what they actually need. I believe it will be even less than 1%. It will not be even 10% who will actually do that. So considering that, in a country like even India, where we have digital propagation so much, would there be a chance that there is a major scale of privacy infringement that can happen? Now, that is question number one. Question number two is taking like 100,000 steps back. Do you think there is an AI bubble that is waiting to burst? So is that also a possibility?
Okay, couple of questions. Let me take the first shot and maybe KK can explain.
I'll take the second question.
Okay. So the first question about privacy, as I told earlier, right? Consent management is going to be fundamental to this whole hyper-personalization, right? If I remember correctly, there was some, litigation in the US, okay? This was because they told consent, we have taken the consent, right? But then when it came for trial, and then they looked at, okay, how are they taking the consent? Is basically, as you do the registration, there is a checkbox, something at the bottom. By default, it is checked, right? So it's like, checked. So as you fill up the form and everything, nobody will read through that fine print. It's checked. Okay, that assumes that, you have given the consent, and then you do. But then with that ruling in the case came in, that entire law got changed, saying that if such kind of text or consent is needed, it has to be explicitly given by the user rather than you assuming that he's automatically given. Okay, so this kind of consent management with explicit what you call intention is going to be a mandatory, and especially with country like India and all, up at least till some couple of years back, we never even had a good data protection law, right? So now we have good data protection laws coming in. People understand the importance of privacy. Our government is also putting up all these as conditions, and people looking at sovereign data, like for example, how that our Indians data should be stored in India itself. Right now everything is stored in some country or the other, right? So these kind of laws will get more and more what you call stringent, and will be enforced. For example, earlier, we didn't even have a presence of any of the social media representatives in US, in India, because if at all a problem happens, right, we didn't know whom to go to. We had to write to, there was no face to, whom we can even talk. But then that was enforced. So today Meta has their own, office and representation. X has, their own representation, right?
Yeah, Mike.
So all those, things are going to be gradually, going to be put in place. And I think people will also become more and more aware of what it's not like taking an ignorant guy for granted, and then saying that, okay, because you had a checked box there, that's why I'm doing that. So those things are going to be placed. So we are going to see those kind of things getting enforced. That's what I believe the way it's going to happen. Okay.
Okay. A second question is about whether AI is a bubble or not, right? Could be a bubble, but a financial bubble, right? So there is a difference between a financial bubble and a technology bubble, right? Essentially, we have seen like a 20 billion revenue OpenAI is able to kind of reach a valuation of 800 billion is looking like a financial bubble, right? For anyone with valuation understanding, it's truly crazy, right? And they are trying to have an IPO next year with 1 trillion IPO, which is one of the biggest IPOs with probably 30 billion revenue, right? With max, like how they can scale probably is to 50 billion. Even at 50 billion, 1 trillion is a huge gain, right? But if it is a technology bubble, absolutely not, because we have, crossed the threshold of technology to be useful to a large scale, people, which means that right now with 900 million users of ChatGPT, it is able to do a lot of work which is of economic value, right? So we are not going to ChatGPT to create poems anymore, right? We are not going there to have fun. We are actually getting 20% of our work, which we are getting paid by the employer to go and deliver, which means 20% of our salary is owed to ChatGPT. I'm saying 20%, actually 50%, right? But even more, right? The point is you are creating economic value with it. If there are 900 million people creating economic value with a tool, it's not a financial, it's not a technology bubble, could be a financial bubble. Like you would look at Anthropic. So there is a small exercise which you can go to Perplexity and ask, for example, give the top 10 LLM models their annual revenue and their at the moment valuation, right? You will not get the valuation of Google, Gemini, or Meta because they are not valued in market rates, but OpenAI and Anthropic is available, right? You'll be able to see multiples, like crazy multiples out there, which nobody will be able to common sensically understand, right? But in terms of technology, I would like to quote Ethan Malik, right, who is a professor of Wharton, who has kind of been like observing AI on a daily basis for the last 3 years. He says something which is very interesting. He says even if AI stops growing, which is impossible, right, because unsupervised learning and RLHF is already on there. Even if it stops learning or doing or growing today, it is still accelerated almost 10 years for us. I think in a way technology has grown so much that we are able to do a lot of economic activity with it, but financial bubble probably. Right.
Enough questions?
So,
this is Rahul. So two questions from my side today. So the first question is with respect to what Radha said. Okay, can hyper-personalization work without AI at all? Can that happen? And the second question is, we are evolving. So as individuals, when we are evolving, how does personalization evolve? Where do you see that evolution graph to be tomorrow? And how does it affect the customer experience?
How does it affect?
Customer experience.
Right. So now, how it will evolve, it is very difficult to predict how it will evolve, right? Because every evolution that you see in anything that happening in the technology space is through experiments. No, had any of us thought that AI is going to be this popular, and it is, probably even talking like in terms of taking away jobs and lives of people, right? Has anybody even thought about it, right? Today we are all scrambling for this, right? So technology, to me, all this is like an evolution. People experiment with things, and then, they try to see the adoption of that, right? Because talk about personalization. Today, if you remember, maybe 5 years back also we had personalizations, but then people had a fair idea what personalization means as a definition, but what all it can personalize, how it can personalize, these things are all evolving, right? So earlier we didn't have AI. It was all used to be rule-based personalization. It used to be segment-based personalization. Now we are talking about hyper-personalization because we see the maturity in technology happening. As I told earlier, right? Let's say I have this wonderful, hyper-personalization infrastructure. But if it is taking me 10 minutes to, give me the response when I go to a page, will you adopt it? No. Correct. So there are new technologies being adopted. How to run that personalization logic on the edge rather than on the server and wait for the response, right? So there are strategies which we are talking about, right? So that will probably open up more opportunities of giving you better experiences, because today with the limitations that are available, this is possible. And today, for example, 2 years or 3 years down the line, quantum computing becomes a major breakthrough. We are talking about computing capacity which we have never ever even thought about. Okay, that is what quantum computing offers. So if that comes, there will be new personalization experience. For example, one of the I was reading about a article which was talking about one of the personalization experience which can happen with quantum computing coming in. Today, you know that, right? When you go and visit a website or a whatever app, something like, there is a banner which will probably, most of the pages will have banner and things like that, right? And even if you say that banner is personalized, it is from a subset of 10 banners, they are going to show you one banner. So that banner has been already created and kept it somewhere in the repository. It picks up whatever matches with your whatever profile, segment, something like that, shows the banner. With quantum computing, they're saying that banner creation itself is going to happen real time, right? The banner creation is going to happen real time. So that is the kind of personalization that you're going to see. So every time when I go and see for a category page, it will create a banner which matches my personalization characteristics, and immediately it is going to be displayed to you. So look at the possibilities are evolving, right? So this is all what is going to happen with I think as we go, the way personalization is going to change.
How does it contribute to omni-channel experience? We are talking about a digital twin and then hyper-personalization, right? So
omni-channel experience, to me, basically, if I were to look at a simple definition of omni-channel, basically you get what you want through whichever channel you visit, right? And it's going to provide a what you call seamless experience, whether you visit a store, whether you go for a mobile, whether you go to a store, what you call web store, or even tomorrow, let's say you're going to do a interaction through your agentic, surfaces, right? So especially with AI and all coming in, what I believe is that this can actually amplify some of these, your omni-channel integration, or omni-channel experience scenarios that it provides, right? Because today, as I said, most of the time, how do I coordinate the things between all of this? How does, for example, the experience that I see on the web is similar, or, it is very near to what I'm seeing on the mobile? Because some of these things are being governed using manual rules, okay? And these are all things, which we are going to see that, it is going to be more, what you call data driven, and, AI will be able to, recommend things, and then, provide that consistent experience, across these channels. So we definitely see that AI is going to be a what you call enabling factor, which can amplify a lot of these, various different, omni-channel experiences, because it will start giving you, various different options based on more of your characteristics. For example, one of the projects that we are doing right now, Manju and team is doing it, right? For a customer, wholesale customer. It's basically like in terms of, providing something called as, an SDD, same day delivery for a, so based on all the characteristics it learns about a customer, it will recommend whether this customer is eligible for a same day delivery or not, right? So if it is for a same day delivery, then obviously as I order it, then it needs to find the nearest store where this person is staying, so that he can, even if he promises a same day delivery, it should be available in that store. So all these things are getting tied together, right? So this is how that omni-channel experience is going to evolve with as the AI technology getting more and more matured. But one thing I really wanted to, tell to this team sitting here, right? Because since you guys have found time to come and, be part of this group, right? There is a lot of technology innovations happening, right? There is an extreme, this is probably the best time, which you can be, in this industry. Only thing what you have to do is that you have to keep your eyes and ears open. Because don't be, boxed into something which you know. You need to be open yourself. And it's not, maybe you may not be working on the technology, but it's good for you to understand how this underlying technology works. For example, even if you're working on a Gen AI, right? You need to question yourself. Hey, how is this happening? Question yourself and then go behind that. So that once you understand it, you will know that, okay, and the comfort you feel like will be you just can't explain the happiness of that. So feel the underlying concept, which will help you a lot. AI is a very, because every time you ask anybody about AI, maybe you will understand 2% of what he's speaking about. Like 98% you will not understand, because he will give you an answer saying it's a black box, right? So nothing is a black box. Because even if, for a simple example, if you want to understand the transformer architecture, I have never seen somebody explain in a very layman term what transformer architecture is all about. You would have seen that pretty, what you call that box diagram, right? But has anybody ever explained to you how this is going to work? Saying that, given a sentence, how will it actually, predict the next token, and then, complete that sentence? Nobody has told it, right? That is where the real thing is going to come. There are a lot of challenges AI as a technology is going to put in place. There is going to be, like, for example, it's not only just from the application layer. All of you might have heard about the 5 layers of do you know what is the biggest challenge in AI? The biggest challenge in AI is energy. Okay? If you don't have energy and electricity, energy means electricity, right? This whole thing is not going to work. If you look at the 5 layers of AI, the bottommost layer is the energy layer. That is where you need the electricity. On top of that, you have what you call it as the data centers, right? Physical. So that is why you will see in the US, 600 or close to $800 billion is getting invested in just these two, building new power plants, building new data centers. $800 billion. And that is where all these companies, for example, even if you notice the kind of comments being made by Trump versus these, company like OpenAI, Anthropic, CEOs, there's a fight which is happening. Now, Trump is saying that companies need to actually, build these data centers, generate that electricity, and then use it for their business, rather than tapping into the national grid. And what these guys are saying is that this has to be treated as an infrastructure. The way you treat it like a highway, a railway, and things like that, because this is a national infrastructure, government should invest. Okay, so there is a big. So now you can understand the challenge, and then on top of that, comes the model. On top of that comes the chips. On top of that comes the model, and only on top of that comes the application that most of the people are sitting in this team might be working on. Right? So then you can understand, now these 5 layers are there, how each of this layer is working. That is the most important step. How are they trying to solve these challenges? They're talking about how do they solve the energy challenge. Either you build more and more nuclear plants or nuclear power plants, things like that, which is not a scalable model. That is where Mr. Elon Musk and all is today talking about putting the data center on space. Right? So obviously the question should come to my boss, how will this data center is a building. How will I put the building in the space, right? It should come into your mind, right? Then you go and search Google, try to find out how is it working, right? So every big company is today talking about all these things. For example, Google has a big project which they call it as Project Suncatcher. And they are going to and obviously the data center is going to be in the satellites. Okay, so data centers are going to be in the satellites. Satellites are going to be placed in a specific orbit which is called a sun synchronized orbit, so that there will be 24/7 sunlight. And then that is how they're going to tap that particular solar energy and then use this to run the data center. And all the training is going to happen on that. Model is going to get created there. Model is going to be beamed out. That is what. And people are talking about how can I do inference, right? So there are two things in AI, right? One is the training and the inference. So today people are pretty comfortable doing training, but inference is going to take time because of the latency, going all the way to the space and getting it all the things done and coming back, right? It's not yet solved. Physics itself doesn't allow you to do that. So people are talking about that. So try to understand all these things, right? Even though you may not work, but the moment you understand these things, you will feel much more confident saying that, hey, I understand this technology, right? And maybe it will open up new opportunities for you. Even in India, people are talking about launching, these satellites as data centers, into the space. And that is where we all want to, because we want people in this community to come back, learn these things, present it back to the team. We all will learn, right? So that's what I wanted to just add on.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good time. Great. I think, how do you feel? I mean, I should be asking you, whether you got something out of this, or was it, very difficult to stay along and be part of this conversation? I think the best part for me, as how I learned from this conversation, is, especially how you concluded two things. One, there is so many things to ask and learn, which is mean that it's so easy for you to kind of prompt it. I was thinking, if you don't know what is latency, ask ChatGPT, right? Or if you don't understand what inference is, you don't have to wait for someone to train you on what inference is. You can go to ChatGPT and ask, explain the physics of inference, right? Which is the best way to probably learn anything. So that explain the physics of it, which would kind of give you first principles way answers, because you're all technology people. You don't want opinions, you want real first principles answers. I think this is the way to move forward. And then as a community, this is amazing. I haven't seen a technology company powering a community like this, where you have your own people from outside coming together, learn this. I think Manju said it right. You have to tweak your algorithm a little bit to see the right stuff, right? So recently my son was saying, can you send me 10 good reels, by the way? I said, why? My guys have spoiled it by sharing some bad stuff, right? So, interesting. Then I was sharing some, tech AI kind of reels, and they said, now it is clean. But I think we need to clean our environment, clean our, what we see, because we don't have control of what we see unless we control it, right? I think that's the best thing which probably we can do, going back and coming back with the community with more of productive stuff. Thank you so much, by the way.